Hi, everyone. This is Dylan Teggart. I'm here with Rémi Champeix. He is a global payroll professional with 15 years of experience doing transformation and process owning. He's currently working for a French multinational company where he's leading payroll transformation there. Rémi, thanks for joining me.
Hey Dylan, thanks for having me.
Before we get started, do you mind telling people a little bit about yourself beyond the brief intro I gave?
Sure. So Remi, French professional, based in Poland. So 10 years I'm living in Poland. Really like it. Been traveling so far quite a bit. Been living in Senegal, Western Africa. Before that for 3 years. Lived in Romania before that. So yeah, a lot of travels. Now decided to settle down to the beautiful Poland. A bit about myself. So yeah, really, I would say global payroll professional, really into payroll professional and global payroll stuff. So 15 years of experience into this area. Really devoted to, I would say, global payroll strategy, global payroll analysis, global payroll transformation, vendor management. So really dedicated into payroll overall, I would say, for my whole track record.
Interesting. Yeah, I think you're one of the few people I know who's worked in so many different environments, around the globe. You have a very interesting perspective. And starting with that, we were kind of talking about the European region before we pressed record here, but within the European Union, which Poland is included, you're dealing with multiple levels of tax legislation, multiple levels of compliance. How does that impact your day to day?
I think it's a great question, and you're absolutely right that Poland, but overall Europe is really complex from a general tax compliance perspective. I would make an example here, and I would refer to the Global Complexity Index that Alight has been releasing, I think, every couple of years. And I think almost every time you get France, you get Germany, you get Italy, you get Belgium in the top 10 most complex countries, most complex payroll. And in general, that's because of the tax compliance. So tax compliance is a big thing. And to be honest, it's one of the main reasons why a lot of companies enter into global payroll. And we'll come to that into probably more detailed. Because it's so complex to maintain that you need a solid global framework and solid payroll suppliers to make sure that you stay compliant in that regard.
So in your day-to-day kind of working life, what is the team you need to surround yourself with to be effective when dealing with all that?
Well, I think you obviously need strong payroll professionals, that's clear. So the skills of the team, then it's really a question of how you run your payroll operations. Because you would know that you have two types, let's say, of models. I'm making it a bit simpler than what it is, but either you just buy the software, so to say, from the supplier, and then you basically are the one dealing with it, so you run the payroll yourselves, or you outsource everything. And there are several levels of granularity here. But I would say suppliers is running payroll for you. And I think for me, the key is to be able to get a supplier that takes care of the tax compliance for you. Because in my experience, that's the number one issue when we go around payroll. The lack of stability overall and the fact that regulation keep changing, more or less, depending on the countries. But in France, as an example, I'm comfortable speaking about it. It's changing all the time, and it's very difficult, not to say impossible, to keep track of it if you're on your own. So for me, the key here is to select a supplier, possibly global supplier, and again, we'll come to that later, that is not only running payroll for you, but is also making sure that your software and your operations are kept compliant.
So what are some of the unique problems that or challenges that you run into in France that would be different?
So again, I would say number one challenge is really in my opinion, the complexity of the payroll, which again is coming from the tax challenges that you get there. The fact that you have layers of exceptions, layers of bracket and exceptions, and that this keeps changing. That's clearly one. I think the fact also that a lot of companies are heavily unionized, which is great to some extent, but it's adding collective labor agreements in the mix. which in general payroll suppliers are not really good at taking, meaning they need to customize their systems. So the way I see it in France, and I mean, you could say the same from other countries, but typically in France, that's really, I would say, the challenges that I see.
And if you were to, advise or inform a company, how would you tell them to better handle, heavy unionization or collective labor agreements to make your life easier?
Well, it's really difficult. I'll be upfront. It's really difficult because in general, when you talk about labor agreements, there's strong pressure. A lot of money involved and a lot of stakes, right? Because it's the capacity of your business to keep running that can be jeopardized if unions get on strike. So ideally, you would be, I would say, abreast of the conversations, meaning as a payroll professional, you would be made aware of what's cooking, what HR is willing to discuss with the unions, and you would make sure that you can chip in and you can try to find a way to make any addition or any implementation in terms of collective labor agreements bite-sized, meaning something that you could take into payroll without disrupting too much. Now, that's idealistic, to be honest, because in general, when there are negotiations, it's first we negotiate, then HR finds a compromise with the unions, and then this is where payroll is invited to the table. However, it's worth trying. Now, beyond that, I would say that what can be done also is once you get your CLAs, try to see if you can unify them. Because in general, companies that are heavily unionized have several branches, several entities. So the key is to find a way to streamline those different collective labor agreements and turn them into, I would say, commonly splitted or commonly shared agreements across the entities so you can unify them. But that's very difficult. If I want to be honest, it's a huge challenge.
Which kind of leads me to my next question. Just because of your, diverse experience in multiple continents, you've probably seen a lot of different models, and you've probably studied a lot of different models to do your job or on payroll strategy. Could you talk a bit about those and some of the interesting experiences you've had?
Yeah, so I think it's really a big topic. So if we talk about global payrolls, I mean, a lot of companies entered into global payroll. At least they globalized their payroll operations, meaning that they reduced the number of suppliers that they have and they centralized their operations and they standardized the process. So they reach, I would say, a common baseline, which maybe is 80% of the process, which is really global, meaning the same across each country. And then with payroll, because payroll is local by essence, you would always have local activities. But I think there are a number of companies that have been successful really globalizing the payroll operations. But I think what is really interesting, and it's really a topic that is close to my heart, is the fact that there's a kind of illusion, in my view, that there are global payroll vendors. I don't think there's global payroll vendors per se. There are payroll vendors that have a presence everywhere, but then you don't get the same software because they operate different software. You have global payroll vendors or payroll vendors that present themselves as global, but the truth is that they only cover under their own name, I don't know, 40 countries, 50 countries in the world, but then the rest, they don't service you directly, they service you through third parties. So I think that's very interesting, and probably we can dive into that a little bit, again, because the topic is really close to my heart. But as opposed to what people say, I don't think there are really global payroll vendors.
Yeah, so let's dive into that topic a bit more if you'd like.
Sure.
Could you elaborate more on that?
Yeah. Well, again, you have two categories of suppliers, and I think it's okay to give the names, but you have ADP, Alight, Dayforce, and I'm naming the strongest one, and I may forget some, but they basically operate a solution that, at least for Alight and ADP, is SAP based. So that's their own product, but it's derived from SAP. So they rely on the SAP technology stack and SAP roadmap. And then right now, SAP, I think, is covering 45 or 50 countries worldwide through some preset configuration. So that's great. I mean, the tool is working super fine in general. But then once you reach the other countries, and as a multinational, you obviously have more than 50 countries, our chances are that if you have 50 or less, well, you won't be covered entirely by the footprints of the likes of ADP or Light. Then what they would offer you is a model where they actually integrate you to their network of in-country payroll providers. And there are pros and cons to that. I think this model is, to some extent, again, great when you get direct servicing. But I think that when you get service through third parties, it's a little different because you don't get the same traction. You're actually dealing with, okay, maybe an account manager that can be part of these companies, but then in the background, it's another company who's working for you. So whenever there's a problem, well, it takes 2 times longer in my experience because those are other people that are dealing for the problem with you. And then you go through your supplier and the supplier is telling you, hey, this is where the ball is dropped, but we're fixing it, so on and so forth. So I think this model is convenient because it's simple. Like it's one supplier, one contract, or 2 suppliers if you want, if you do it with several of them, but it's one contract per supplier. And then if you're not willing to deal with the detail in the background because payroll maybe is not high touch and it's okay to go with the flow and it keeps things simple, and maybe your company is not so complex in itself, I think it can work. But then if you have a company that's really high touch, again, because you have factories, because you have very large headcounts, or maybe because the culture is a culture of, I would say, perfectionism, I'm afraid that this model is a bit of a hit or miss. So in some countries, it's going to work because you will get the best of what the supplier can offer under their direct servicing. But then in other countries, may be more challenging for the reasons I was mentioning. So that's one model. But then there's another model which is different. It's the model that companies like KPMG, Grant Thornton, the Big Four basically are offering. EY, I mean, they are all doing it now. They offer you payroll services in country directly under their name. But then in general, what I've noticed is that the integration is not fantastic here. I mean, the technology is not so great because basically it still is local platforms or local tools that are not unified. So yes, you have one supplier, for instance, KPMG or EY or whoever. But then once you start to integrate with them, the tools are all different. So it's not so obvious to find the right, I would say, platform for you to be able to unify, standardize your processes. Now, there are a few changes that were brought to that recently. Now you have a number of aggregators, companies, and maybe we'll discuss that a little later. Payza is an example, but there are more who offer you integration services, not only, but they basically take your current scope of payroll and they integrate it. So that could be a great addition. That could be a great way to complement the deal with those suppliers. But I would say that the downside of this model is really that, yes, you have one supplier really directly servicing you, so one contract, and you know whom you're talking to. But then in general, for those technologists who are not specialized into payroll, the technology is not fantastic. The integration is not fantastic. And still, it's several different systems in the background. So those are the 2 big models that I've observed. And I've noticed that companies either take model 1, meaning they go with 1 or 2 suppliers and they accept the fact that there are third parties in the background. That's first, I would say, strategy. And strategy 2 is basically you go crisscross. I mean, you take the large suppliers that I was mentioning for the countries when they service you under their name. So you really take, I would say, the best of what they can offer. But where they don't give you, or where they give you, sorry, the in-country partners, I mean, those third parties, then you go with the other suppliers. You go with the likes of KPMG, Ernst & Young, which in general cover fairly, I would say, small headcount countries. So it's a little more complex to manage because it's more suppliers in the mix, but I think it's a little more fine-tuned. And if you're a high-touch company, I think it makes sense to go with this model, to be honest.
Interesting. And if you were to kind of be given the keys to the CEO suite of a company like this, what would be the changes you would make to make a better, or let's say you had the opportunity to make a payroll solution yourself that did all of these things. How would you what would be the main things you'd structure into it?
So for me, I would say I'm spitballing here, but if you were to ask me, okay, what would be your dream? I mean, what would be the best? It would really be a solution that could be potentially SAP based or anything else, but something really seasoned that has been in the market for years and years and years. with very strong connections and capacity to stay up to date to the regulations. Because for me, again, that's the key. If you want to have stable payroll operations, the cornerstone is really reliable solution with strong integration, but really strong compliance management. So, if I was able to express my wish list, I would certainly ask guys, please give us the same solution everywhere. Please have it pre-configured everywhere in every country of the world, because I really think that this is the key to really build compliant and solid payroll operations.
Yeah, I feel like the upfront investment for that could be massive, but the long-term repercussions could be huge. So
no surprise here. I mean, the guys know why. I mean, they build a roadmap, and this roadmap, as I understand, is based on some of their clients. So they survey their biggest clients, and they ask, okay, what if tomorrow we expand in 5 or 10 countries? What would be the topics for you? And they run some surveys. I hope they do. And this is how they develop the roadmap. So yes, you're right, it's an investment because you need to pre-configure your payroll tool against regulations, and every time it's different. But I really think this would be great if they were to manage that. And again, with 50 countries already done, I would be hoping that, the money they invested, I mean, they could still use some of that and really leverage the investment done in the past. Hopefully that they would not have to reinvent the wheel and reconfigure everything from scratch. They could still use the existing to some extent and still be able to offer some preset products again that would really cover the whole globe. Because for me, again, that's a cornerstone of compliant payroll.
right, and kind of transitioning into a similar topic, as you mentioned, expansion. There's obviously new trends forming in the market, and you're in a part of the world where different trends are probably happening than in the US. So what are some of the things you're seeing happening, this year, and what do you predict is going to happen in 2025 as well?
So I think there's one thing which is definitely happening, and I think it started maybe 5 years ago, but I see it really apparent now. It's the appearance of a lot of new players. I think we have easily 20, I would say, credible payroll players at a global scale. And I think at least half of them are aggregators. So it's companies that don't necessarily offer you their own engine for payroll, but they aggregate your current landscape. Meaning you have payroll supplier A, payroll supplier B, blah, 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 and you're asking yourself, okay, what am I going to do to standardize this? Am I going to, I would say, dismantle my own setup and all those countries' payroll? And am I going to, spend, I don't know, 5 to 8 years implementing new payroll solutions, maybe one payroll solution across the board? Or am I just going to keep my landscape because after all, those suppliers are not so bad, but I will aggregate all of that through one tool, which is going to unify my landscape. Because for me as a user, this is the tool I'm going to be using. So this is where I'm going to be watching all my process. I'll be following all my workflows. I will be approving my payroll from there. One tool, unified report, unified layout. This is where I'm going to be able also to monitor the costs. So all the operations, the orchestration of the process could be done from there. So I've seen that. I've seen a couple of companies, and I think what they offer is pretty promising. Of course, if you have issues with your payroll itself, if the engine is, I would say, totally not functioning, or if you have big issues with the supplier in the background, you won't fix it through aggregation. But if you're okay with your current suppliers, but you don't want to invest into 5 to 8 years project, I think this is an interesting tool, to be honest, which I started to explore myself. So I really believe in this model. I know that those suppliers will involve quite a number of automation, sometimes automated reconciliation between the gross that you instruct and the gross payroll that you get in the system. So a lot of automation opportunities. I think this is all great. I think it will get better and better. But I really see this as a trend. So a lot of aggregators are trying to really hit the market. I think the key for them is going to be to adjust from a startup or maybe scale-up mentality, because they started as scale-ups, and their clients are in general startup or scale-ups companies or tech companies, and for them to really adjust to multinational companies that are more complex, I think, to cater for, and who are maybe a little more traditional in the mindset. I think that's the main stake for those companies. plus the fact that there's a lot of them. So I don't know if they will all survive. I mean, probably there will be a few, I mean, some companies will disappear because I think there are too many players. But I think this is great. I think this is a great alternative to the, I would say, models that we had in the past where we had no alternative. If you want to unify, you need to change all your payroll softwares. So that's really a trend that I've observed. I think another trend is really around reporting and analytics. So, I mean, there's been a boom. It's no secret to anyone that analytics have become super important for companies. They want to run some analysis. They want to be predictive. And payroll plus time and attendance, which in general go together, contains a lot of data that is really, really important. A lot of data that are around the employees' behavior, I mean, sick leaves and so on and so forth, which are really, really precious. But also payroll carries what is in general for companies the number one expense, I mean, salaries and all labor costs. So I think payroll is sitting on a gold mine in terms of reporting, and I think companies really started to use that. And I see really a trend now that suppliers, when they come to you, they really offer you some modules that are dedicated to analytics. And they make it a selling point, really a marketing point. With our solutions, not only payroll, but also reporting analytics. We can offer you very powerful analytics, which you can integrate to your own data warehouse if you want to. Leveraging the fact, again, that they are processing a lot of data that are really insightful when it comes to the life of the company. So that's really the number 2 trend that I have. And then there's another one, which, to be honest, okay, maybe a bit ashamed to talk about because it's such a basic, but I really think now that the self-service for employees and the online pay slips and online tax certificates is really now something common. Maybe 5 to 10 years ago, you could say, wow, fantastic. I mean, in this company, they managed to implement e-pay slip in, I don't know, this number of countries. I think now it's a standard. I think all the companies now manage to implement e-pay slips, sometimes not through unified solution, but I think they all manage to do that. And I really think it's a basic, but also a trend that probably is now coming to an end.
Interesting. And I'm sure like here, AI is, a hot topic. How has it kind of been, I guess, how's the carpet kind of been unrolled there, rolled out there, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And how are people receiving it? How do you feel it's kind of how has it been interacting with the day-to-day life of someone like you?
I'll be honest, I didn't get my head around it too much. I mean, I'm really trying to get concrete and tangible. I attended a lot of meetings around AI and practically applied to HR and to payroll. I never got a very satisfying response of what practically it's going to do for us. I mean, the responses I'm getting, it's like, yeah, it's going to automate, it's going to improve, yeah, okay, but how exactly is it going to work? What is going to happen? Are we going to be replacing tomorrow people because we'll be able with AI to identify all the common errors, for instance? And then the responses I'm getting are like, yes, it's going to be possible, but then it takes some, learning, machine learning, and so on and so forth. Okay, so then we're back to something that was, again, maybe a little less than 5 years, very big. So the machine learning, like the automation. So I think conceptually it's not new what it would bring to payroll. I mean, again, that's the way I understand it. And I may be wrong here because I think the topic is very dynamic. But for me, conceptually, it's not going to bring more than machine learning and automation that suppliers already started to invest into and companies themselves. But what I understand is that it may go further. It would be more powerful. So we may get faster to a stage where basically we would automate the payroll controls and we would be able to trust the AI because the AI is so strong and so well educated that yes, it will really spot the errors. So not things that sound like errors, because in payroll, you get a lot of things that sound suspicious, but they can be explained for a lot of reasons. So something powerful enough to really differentiate and capture what is really an error. Yeah, and I understand AI could help us to get there faster. But again, that's what I've been told. I didn't really understand how much it's going to differ from, again, machine learning and the previous automation that we've been, hearing about, and a lot of marketing was made around. But I really want to believe in it. I just want to understand a little better how it's going to work.
Yeah, I think that's becoming a more common topic people are bringing up, and including myself. And Nick and I from 360 Insights are going to HR Tech in Las Vegas next month, and I'm interested to have conversations with more conversations with people to see how, over the course of even just the past 12 months, kind of expectations are changing, and what people really see as the future for this technology that everyone felt was kind of going to blow the doors open of everything we do. But I think when it hits the real world, it does always have a bit of more practical usage. And like you said, I kind of want to see what those are going to be before we invest.
I'm really, not dismissing this in any ways. I'm just being honest that I still don't grasp exactly how it's going to work. What else is it going to do that versus, already known automation and machine learning that we've heard about. But again, I do believe it's going to change. I'm just curious, when is it going to be mature enough to really make a difference, and maybe make that we don't need anyone to check payroll anymore, or we just need maybe one person to check a few exceptions. That should be really nominal if the technology works fine. So I'm really looking forward to it. But I think now it's more potential than something tangible that we are getting presented by those who market this tool.
Well, thank you very much, Remi. It's been a lot of great insight, and you're incredibly informed on some of these topics, which is great to hear. You have a very unique perspective. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to touch on or let people know?
No, I think that we really went through a lot of things, and I hope it wasn't too heavy for those who are going to be listening to us or watching us. And probably it would call for some potential follow-up where we could, break down those items, because there were a lot of, I would say, content here. And some of those items deserve some deep dive. I mean, people may have questions on that, and we may definitely delve a little more into those. But I think that was useful, I hope, a useful conversation, and I think we really covered quite a lot of ground today.
Absolutely. Yeah, for anyone listening, if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us at 360 Insights, and maybe we can have Remi on again and get into it a bit more.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.